towards the end of your book, you mentioned that although these are Asian super bloggers, the majority of the fashion blogosphere is white, like cis, able-bodied, etc., etc. And I just want to maybe talk more about how there seems to be not a glass ceiling, but what I notice when I visit fashion schools is that there's a huge amount of like immigrant Asian young designers from wealthy backgrounds, but they're not becoming designers in their own right at they're not becoming the next Alexander Wang. A lot of them are going right back to Asia or something. And there are, of course, Asian super bloggers, but I don't feel like there has been a lot, or there is a divide between American, like European bloggers, and then like the Weibo, like Chinese, like bloggers that don't speak English. And I'm wondering if you see that changing anytime soon, or if there's some explanation other than, maybe buyers are just straight up racist.
Well, that can be also part of the explanation, right? Because buyers are like live in our world too. Yeah. I mean, I think it's it's a great question, because what you're seeing at places like Parson and Pratt is like these kinds of army, right, of Asian students who've come to study fashion, and they either fill up the back room of the Gap, right, where they have like hundreds. If you like even crack open the door of the Gap, or like Ann Taylor, if you go behind the like front room, it's like all Asian people, right? Mass market firms, right? And they're not transforming the structure in the sense that, the like, who is going to be the next head of Chanel? I mean, these are titles that are passed from one white man to another, right? These people are not contenders for that, right? At the same time, you're right that a lot of these students are going back to China, going back to India, going back to Vietnam, and they're starting things. And I actually met a couple of Chinese designers recently, and they're going to start their own company in China. And I said, is the goal to come and sell here or present in Fashion Week? And they're like, no. If we even get like the smallest part of the Chinese market, we'll make way more money than we could ever hope to make here, right? So that army is going somewhere else, right? And they may not be the army forever.
This reminds me of when Thuy's book came out. There was a New York Times piece. There was a New York Times piece, an infamous New York Times piece that I'm still pissed about. Was basically her book, but forgot to mention her name. Anyway. One of the points that Thuy makes in her book, and the point that this New York Times article makes, is that the rise of these Asian designers that Thuy was looking at in her book and talking about also coincided with this moment where we were seeing so many Asian students, and Thuy explains exactly why this is the case. But the kind of conflation of these big name Asian designers and all these Asian fashion design students suggested, and I saw this again with the fashion blog, suggested that fashion was post-racial, right? That we had gotten into this moment where, if not post-racial, then it was fashion had turned Asian somehow, right? Western fashion had become dominated by Asians, and that's important because with that kind of hype, and this is something I talk about in the book, with that hype about, oh, look at all of these Asians, very quickly, and we see this in so many different arenas, very quickly that hype becomes fear, right? Like, oh my God, they're taking over. Oh my God, what do we do? What's going to happen? And Alexander Wang was actually named the creative director of, and I'm blanking, Balenciaga, and that was supposedly a big deal, except that everyone thought that he had some underground Chinese connection and were unsure about what all this meant and what does it mean for a Chinese person or a Taiwanese person, Chinese-looking person, to head this French legacy brand, right? And so that kind of hype about Asians and the kind of post-racialness of the fashion industry is just something we keep seeing, that hype and then that fall to like the Asian fear. Is something we see over and over again, but even with the fashion bloggers, the constant kind of news stories about the super bloggers suggested that the digital world was post-racial, that fashion now had become democratized because of the internet. And something that I just repeat over and over in the book is that the reason that we keep hearing about this holy trinity is because that's really all there is, right? There's the vast majority of bloggers of any color will never make any money from blogging. We'll never get the kinds of collaborations and side income that these bloggers have. And so in some ways, the rise of Asian designers, the rise of Asian fashion bloggers has been a way of creating kind of an alibi and in a lot of ways a distraction from the continuing and evolving kind of racism that fashion has always kind of operated in, right?